Let me say this loud and clear. Being a high-value woman is not about being liked, it's about being respected. It's not about the dresses you wear, the titles you hold, or the praise you receive. It's about the energy you carry, the standards you refuse to drop, the power you don't need to announce. A high-value woman doesn't beg, she builds. She doesn't chase, she chooses. She doesn't shrink to fit into spaces that weren't designed for her. She creates her own space, and then she owns it. Not because someone handed it to her, but because she decided she was worthy of standing in it. And here's the untold secret. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about unlearning who you were told to be. You were conditioned to think that being soft means being silent, that your worth is determined by your relationship status, that your value depends on how many people approve of you. No, that version of womanhood is expired. The high-value woman is reborn when she chooses herself over validation. When she walks away from tables where her voice is muted. When she stops explaining her standards and starts enforcing them. She's not looking for permission. She's moving with purpose. She invests in her mind. She doesn't gossip, she grows. She doesn't compete, she collaborates. She surrounds herself with people who hold her accountable, not those who make her comfortable. Her circle is tight, her boundaries are firm, and her self-respect is non-negotiable. This woman is dangerous, not because she harms but because she heals. She disrupts every room she enters with her clarity. She doesn't seek power, she embodies it. And that kind of presence can't be faked. It's earned, through silence, through struggle, through self-discipline. And yes, she gets tired, she doubts herself, she's fallen. But here's the difference. She rises differently. Every scar has shaped her. Every no she's ever heard built her backbone. Every time she was underestimated, she turned that into fuel. She doesn't hold grudges. She holds vision. And if you're listening to this thinking, I'm not there yet, let me tell you something. You don't need to have it all figured out to start. You just need to stop giving away pieces of yourself to people who haven't earned them. You need to speak up when silence costs your peace. You need to love yourself in action, not just in affirmations. Stop waiting to be chosen. Choose yourself. Raise your standards and don't apologize for them. Set boundaries and don't bend them. Lead with truth, walk in strength, and carry the grace of a woman who knows exactly who she is, even if the world hasn't caught up yet. So here's your call to action: stand the hell up. Step into your worth. Reclaim your voice, and be the woman who doesn't just inspire others, be the woman who awakens them. A high-value woman chooses herself, not once, not occasionally, but consistently. She does this in the quiet moments when no one is watching, when the decision to honor herself over pleasing others feels heavy. She understands that self-betrayal is the deepest kind of pain, so she doesn't sacrifice her truth for temporary acceptance. She is not afraid to disappoint others if it means remaining loyal to who she is. Choosing herself isn't about selfishness, it's about self-respect, and she wears it like armor in a world that constantly asks her to shrink. She has learned that waiting to be chosen is a form of self-abandonment. She doesn't sit by the phone, waiting for someone to remember her worth. She doesn't mold herself into a version that fits someone else's expectations. She chooses herself in the way she walks away from one-sided relationships. She chooses herself in the way she doesn't chase after people who make her question her value. She knows that clinging to people who only half see her is far lonelier than being alone. Every time she's told she's too much, she hears it as a reminder that she's not meant to be contained. Every time someone tries to make her doubt her instincts, she chooses to trust herself even more. She listens deeply to the voice within that whispers truth through the noise. She doesn't silence her needs just to maintain peace. She understands that peace built on her silence is not peace, it's control. When the world tells her to settle, she raises her standards. When it tells her to be patient, she becomes intentional. Choosing herself means she no longer waits for someone to give her a seat at the table. She builds her own, knowing that anything she creates from a place of alignment will never require her to beg for validation. She creates space for her joy, her ambition, and her wholeness without apology. She chooses herself in the small things, by getting rest instead of overcommitting, by saying no without explaining, by investing in her mind and body. She doesn't need a crisis to remember her worth. It lives in how she moves through her day, how she protects her energy, how she speaks about herself even in private. She treats herself like someone she loves deeply, not like a backup plan or an afterthought. And when she falls short or forgets who she is, she doesn't stay there. She doesn't wallow in shame. She returns to herself with grace. Choosing herself also means forgiving herself, quickly, kindly, fiercely. She doesn't carry guilt for outgrowing versions of her that once made survival possible. She honors them but doesn't stay confined by them. Her evolution is non-negotiable, and she embraces it fully. In every decision, she pauses to ask, does this honor me? And if the answer is no, she lets go. Not because it's easy, but because she knows the cost of self-abandonment is too high. She's no longer willing to bend until she breaks. She doesn't need to be chosen by others to feel valuable. She knows her value is not up for debate, and she acts accordingly. She has become the kind of woman who inspires others not by trying to be liked, but by refusing to be anything other than herself. She's not moved by trends or opinions. She moves with clarity. She moves with intention. She chooses herself every time she walks away from chaos and toward her peace. Every time she invests in her healing rather than feeding her pain. Every time she shows up without needing to be saved. To choose herself is to reclaim everything the world told her to hide. Her softness. Her ambition. Her voice. Her boundaries. Her brilliance. She no longer compartmentalizes herself to make others comfortable. She brings her full self to the table, and if it's too much, then it's simply not her table. She doesn't dilute her essence for convenience. She elevates it with every choice she makes, and in doing so, she becomes unstoppable. Not because of what she has, but because of who she has become. Not dependent, not desperate, not defined by what she's given, but by what she chooses. And the most powerful choice she makes again and again is to stand with herself, for herself, as herself. A woman who lives by her standards rather than chasing approval is a woman who cannot be controlled. She doesn't shift to fit into someone else's narrative. She doesn't bend her values to make others comfortable. She knows that when you trade your standards for approval, you lose the essence of who you are. And once that's lost, no amount of praise, acceptance, or validation will ever feel fulfilling. So instead, she chooses the harder path. The one that requires saying no, setting boundaries, and being misunderstood rather than being misaligned. Her standards are not rules to restrict her life. They are the structure that protects it. They are rooted in self-respect, experience, and clarity. They are the silent guardians of her peace. Whether it's in relationships, career, friendships, or how she treats herself, her standards create the filter through which everything must pass. And anything that fails to meet them is not punished. It's simply not entertained. She does not seek to change others to meet her. She simply walks where she is already seen and valued without needing to prove her worth. She understands that approval is fleeting, and often, it comes with strings. It's conditional. It changes based on opinions, emotions, and societal trends. But standards, when built from within, remain. They are not affected by mood swings or public opinion. They remain grounded when everything else is uncertain. She would rather walk alone than lower her expectations to accommodate someone who doesn't have the depth to rise to them. She's learned that approval often comes at the cost of authenticity. It's a quiet compromise, a slow erosion of self. It starts with being agreeable, staying silent, laughing when something isn't funny, saying yes when her soul says no. And before long, she doesn't recognize herself. So now, she doesn't chase after approval like it's a badge of honor. She treats it like what it is, a byproduct, not a purpose. If it comes while she stays true to herself, fine. If it doesn't, she still stands firm. Every time she raises her standards, something or someone falls away. And that's not a sign of loss. It's a sign of alignment. She's not afraid of the void that comes after she sets a new boundary. She knows that emptiness is often the space where transformation begins. She doesn't panic in the silence. She doesn't rush to fill it. She lets her new frequency clear out anything that was only there to feed her need for external validation. She doesn't need a crowd to echo her decisions. She makes them from a place of grounded conviction. When someone questions her standards, she doesn't flinch. She doesn't over-explain. She doesn't water them down to appear more likable. She knows that those who are triggered by her standards are often the ones who benefit from her having none. So she stands firm, not with arrogance, but with unshakable inner clarity. She is not for everyone, and that's the point. The more she refines her standards, the more she filters out what isn't aligned, and that's not a loss. That's her power. She's not trying to be universally accepted. She's trying to be deeply rooted in her truth. She doesn't belong to the masses. She belongs to herself. And those who are meant to be in her life will meet her where she stands. Not where she used to settle. She's not moved by compliments that contradict her standards. She's not seduced by temporary validation that would cost her long-term peace. She has trained herself to pause before she pleases, to breathe before she agrees, to assess whether her actions are rooted in self-respect or fear of rejection. And in those small moments, she realigns. because standards are not just about what she demands from others. They are also about what she demands from herself. Even when she's doubted, even when people call her too much or hard to please, she doesn't shrink, because she knows what it took to get to this level of clarity. She knows the pain of ignoring her own voice just to be accepted. She's done negotiating her worth. She no longer allows emotional discounts just to keep people around. If it costs her peace, her values, or her dignity, the price is too high. She is not afraid to be seen as difficult if it means being true to herself. She would rather be respected than liked. She would rather walk in truth than be applauded for pretending. She chooses to raise the bar and stand by it, no matter how long she has to stand alone. Because to her, that is the ultimate form of self-love, not in how loudly she demands respect from others, but in how quietly and consistently she refuses to lower her standards. Power doesn't always enter a room loudly. It doesn't need to shout, demand, or beg for attention. Real power is quiet, it's steady. It's a presence you feel before a word is even spoken. A woman who embodies power doesn't need to explain it. You sense it in the way she carries herself, the way she moves, and the way she responds with intention rather than impulse. Her calm unnerves people because it doesn't come from pretending, it comes from mastering herself first. She doesn't wear her power like an accessory for others to admire. She wears it in how she handles pressure, how she holds her boundaries without needing to justify them, how she walks away from anything that doesn't serve her without making a scene. Her strength is woven into every choice she makes, even the ones no one sees. She isn't focused on appearing powerful. She's focused on being powerful from the inside out. Power isn't in the volume of your voice. It's in your tone, your pause, your timing. She knows when to speak and when to stay silent, when to act and when to wait, when to let people reveal themselves without her needing to prove anything. She's learned that true power is strategic. It's about restraint. It's about knowing what deserves your energy and what doesn't. And most of the time, the most powerful move is choosing not to react. She's not in competition with anyone. That's the luxury of being secure in who you are. Her confidence isn't performative. It doesn't come from needing to be the best in the room. It comes from knowing she's enough even when no one is watching. She doesn't chase attention because attention is not the currency she values. Her currency is peace, clarity, alignment, and control over her own emotions. She's not interested in being feared. She wants to be respected. But if her strength intimidates others, she doesn't shrink to ease their discomfort. That's not her responsibility. Her power is rooted in her values, her character, and her ability to remain composed under pressure. She knows the loudest person in the room often has the least control. She's not moved by noise. She listens to energy, to intentions, to patterns. Her body language speaks before her words ever do. There's confidence in the way she holds eye contact, in how she doesn't rush to fill silence, in how she sits comfortably with herself. Her presence doesn't beg to be noticed, yet it commands attention. She doesn't need to be loud to be felt. She doesn't seek permission to take up space. She owns it by simply showing up fully, authentically, unapologetically. She has learned that true power is how you hold yourself when things don't go your way. When you've been disrespected. When you've been underestimated. She doesn't break down publicly for sympathy. She rebuilds in private with resilience. Her healing is sacred, and her transformation isn't for show. She understands that power is not in how you control others, but in how you control yourself in moments of chaos. Her strength is in her softness too. The kind that forgives without forgetting. The kind that sets boundaries without bitterness. The kind that lets go without losing compassion. Because power doesn't harden her. It refines her. It doesn't make her cold. It makes her clear. She doesn't need to belittle others to elevate herself. She rises without pushing anyone down. She doesn't measure her worth by comparison, only by how closely she lives in alignment with her truth. People wonder how she does it. How she stays composed when others would have unraveled. What they don't see are the battles she fought internally. The emotional discipline she practiced. The hours she spent in silence building herself, trust. She doesn't just appear powerful. She is powerful because she's done the work. Because she's earned every ounce of her strength with choices made in solitude and moments of deep discomfort. And while others announce their strength with noise and ego, she lets her life speak for itself. Her boundaries speak for her. Her energy speaks for her. Her ability to rise, to walk away, to say no, to stay grounded when others lose control. That is her voice. She doesn't need to declare her power. She embodies it, and that's what makes it unforgettable. Choosing growth over comfort is not glamorous. It's not the kind of transformation that comes with applause or instant rewards. It's the kind of decision that happens quietly, in the tension between who you are and who you're becoming. A high-value woman understands that comfort can be a trap, a seductive one. It feels safe, it feels familiar, but it's often the very thing that holds her back from rising into her fullest potential. She knows that everything she desires, clarity, peace, purpose, power, lives on the other side of discomfort. Growth demands sacrifice. It demands that you let go of the need to be liked, the habit of staying silent, the tendency to play small. It asks you to stretch in ways that feel unnatural at first. It pushes you into rooms where you're not the most confident, conversations where you're forced to confront your own reflection, and moments where everything you once believed is tested. But she chooses it anyway, because she refuses to be the same version of herself year after year. She knows that real growth is not just about acquiring knowledge. It's about application. It's how she holds herself accountable when no one is watching. It's in the decisions she makes when ego wants to win, but wisdom tells her to pause. It's in walking away from toxic cycles, even when it's lonely. It's in speaking truth when silence would be easier. Growth isn't a highlight reel. It's the unlearning, the healing, the breaking, the rebuilding. Comfort keeps her in places that no longer feed her. It whispers to her to settle, in love, in friendship, in ambition. Because what's known feels easier than what's next. But she resists it. She sees comfort as a warning sign when it begins to dull her drive, her hunger, her fire. She pays attention when routines become ruts, when convenience becomes complacency, when stability starts to feel like a cage. She's not afraid to disrupt her own life if it means aligning with her purpose. She's not afraid to look foolish while learning something new. She doesn't need to appear perfect. She needs to feel alive. And growth, though messy and unpredictable, makes her feel more alive than any false sense of security ever could. She would rather stumble forward than remain stuck in stillness dressed up as peace. Every time she chooses growth, she sheds an old layer of herself. A layer built from survival, from fear, from what others expected her to be. And though it hurts, though she mourns the familiar, she never clings. She lets it fall. She honors who she was without being held hostage by her past. She doesn't confuse history with destiny. What served her once may now be the very thing standing in her way, and she has the courage to release it. She leans into discomfort with curiosity instead of resistance. When life challenges her, she asks, "What is this here to teach me?" Not, "Why is this happening to me?" That shift alone changes everything. It gives her power where she once felt powerless. It makes her a participant in her own evolution, not a victim of her circumstances. She grows with intention, not just by default. She surrounds herself with people who challenge her to level up, not just cheer for the version of her that's easy to digest. She welcomes feedback, not because it's pleasant, but because it sharpens her. She doesn't want praise that keeps her stagnant. She wants truth that propels her forward. She listens to those who have done the work, who speak from experience, who live in alignment. Her tribe reflects her vision, not just her comfort zone. There are days when growth feels heavy, where everything in her wants to retreat. But she's trained herself to keep going, not recklessly, but relentlessly. She rests, but she doesn't quit. She reflects, but she doesn't regress. She has tasted the freedom that comes with self-mastery, and no illusion of ease is worth going backward. She knows she is meant for more, and that knowing fuels her through the hard parts. Growth doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in the dark. When she chooses discipline over distraction, when she walks away from drama, when she rewires her thinking, when she holds herself to a higher standard even when no one is clapping. It is in these moments, raw, unfiltered, unseen, that her transformation takes place. And with every decision to rise, she builds a life that isn't just impressive. It's deeply aligned with who she was always meant to be.